This video is brought to you by Eiji cameoing his way into a main character. We had a packed episode this week, something to chew into for all kinds of audiences. Moments of grief with Sinon and Alice, moments of hope of an unchained future with Iskahn and Scheta, Betrayal on Ocean Turtle, and the Ghost of Aincrad making his presence known. Welcome everyone, it's me Gamerturk, your best source of Art Online information, and this is Alicization EXPLAINED, featuring War of Underworld episode 15, Instigation. Starting with the short overview as usual, we have adapted from volume 17, Alicization Awakening, chapter 21, midway part 2, until chapter 21, midway part 3, so about 40 pages, which should be no surprise considering the solid adaptation this week, just like the week before, just like the week before that. We had minor drops here and there, some of which I would even argue were beneficial that they were dropped in the first place, and we'll get into all of that in a bit of course. But if you're new to my Explained series, what I do here is essentially provide you all the vital information on characters, events, action, lore from the source material, light novels, things that the anime did not convey properly or just did not have the time to, so you can still see the full picture. If you want to jump to specific events, timestamps will be in the description along with Amazon and Book Depository affiliate links so you can grab the novels for yourselves before Amazon goes through with their crusade against light novels. Go get them while you still can, as more and more light novels have been disappearing from their offers lately. Also, Medina, Kirito and Yu-Gi-Oh merch may just be what you're looking for, illustrated by the amazing Jen K. It is available on my Teespring page. With that, let's cast away the sly foxes spreading misinformation and get on with Alicization Explained. We start shortly after where we left off, on the plateau where Bercouli had given his only life to save Alice. In this short scene between Sinon and Alice, there's a minor drop that I'm glad happened, but we'll get to it shortly. First off, I like that they are showcasing Sinon's flight with an aura around her. Really gives you the idea that she's doing it mentally rather than physically, as the ability of the account itself. Though I can't wait for them to just drop the concept entirely next week when the fight scene comes up, because it's just too much additional work to keep up. Either way, this portion of the dialogue between the two is a borderline line-by-line adaptation, nothing really I can add here. I certainly feel having no soundtrack and just the whistling wind as background noise is a great choice, really drives that grief home, you know. I'm also glad to see some more life in animation, even in rudimentary scenes, as well as some interesting cinematography here and there, something they really started picking up on with the start of the war back in episode 4 or 5. Those far shots of Sinon flying or descending, small things like these make a huge difference all around. Also, the wrinkles under Alice's eyes from crying, such a great attention to detail. But enough talk, I am focusing on this scene for two very specific reasons. First off, the cut. Let's mention that first with a quick reminder. If you've been watching Alicization Explained for a long while, you already know bodies of the deceased don't instantly disintegrate. There was a scene mentioned as a flashback a couple sections later where Alice was trying to mount Bercouli's body on Amayori, or at least one of the two dragons, so he could be given a proper burial afterwards, essentially to be taken to Fanatio back at the HQ. And seeing Alice's sadness, Sinon asks if Fanatio was her quote-unquote love rival, to which Alice replies, "You are my rival." Those exact words. And do follow along for now, because the more I explain, the clearer the meaning will become. At this point, Alice is grieving the death of her only father figure. On top of this, another quote-unquote goddess just descended from the heavens, originating from the real world, with people wreaking havoc on her world and loved ones, and this new one is just butting her head into things she has no business in. Sure, she doesn't do it in a disrespectful manner, and Alice knows that too. That's why her response is cheeky, as she's blurting out her frustration, anger and grief with a simple retort to hide her feelings and act tough, as she has always done since we first saw her in the series. Always putting up a facade towards others to portray herself as much of an unshakable wall as possible. And why does she not consider herself to be a love rival towards Sinon, but rather just a rival? Well, for starters, she has no romantic feelings for Kirito, but more importantly, she has no reason to think Sinon has any romantic feelings towards Kirito either. This was a small flashback scene which followed their earlier conversation, which was featured in the anime to a certain extent too. And the second reason why I'm focusing on this scene is, well, an extension of this flashback, the context that wasn't there in this cut dialogue. There are gonna be those people claiming Sinon has said, "I love Kirito." And yes, she did. But that is a trick the headcanon shippers use all the time. Isolate sentences to apply meaning that isn't there. Here, I'll read you exactly what Sinon said right from the books. "I'll be honest, I like Kirito. I love him. So does Asuna. There are many other people who do too. They are all worried about him. They are praying for him to get better. Although they can't say it, they're all wondering why Kirito had to go to these lengths." Did you catch the important context of the love Sinon was talking about? She specifically said, without changing the subject, just adding on to it, many other people too. On top of her love, Asuna's love, many others love Kirito too. All those who have arrived in Underworld to help him recover. All those who have literally formed a defensive circle around him to protect specifically him. She's literally explicitly talking about the same love concept that has time and time again appeared in Alicization series. It was the core aspect of Alice Tsuberg and Yu-Gi-Oh! They loved everyone around them for who they were and wanted to spread their love for life. It is such a simple link to a couple episodes ago. Heck, the two back-to-back sentences of Sinon's explanation makes this such a simple and general concept of love that I even ponder sometimes whether I should explain such simple things. But then I realized that there are just so many headcanon shippers and sources of misinformation out there trying to legitimize their dreams that, yes, I do in fact need to read two back-to-back sentences, just in case. Well, that's already 2 pages of a script for a 4-minute pre-opening scene, so we're off to a great explain this week, aren't we? Anyways, I just love the adaptation of this scene. No music, all emotions solely through voice acting and great crisp keyframes for detailed facial expressions. I also am certainly happy that they dropped this scene, which most certainly be taken the wrong way by many people. As I said, even those who read the light novel sometimes cannot remember it is 3 sentences back to back featuring the whole context rather than a single sentence they like isolating to show as evidence for their headcanon. Moving on, Scheta and Iskahn scenes are absolutely brutal. Dampa with that headbutt making Zinedine Zidane jealous, Iskahn's bones in the lower leg shattering out of his skin, ugh. And then Scheta's scenes as she realizes she feels something different. She used to feel like cutting everything in her way was her only purpose in life, and thus Quinella had crafted her the Black Lily sword. She had said that this was a sword representing the curse carved upon her soul. The curse of homicidal urges created by a wavering in her genetic traits. Cut and cut and cut again. Only at the end of that bloody path will you find the key to undo your curse, perhaps. And as she had come to the realization of what the late administrator had said, she was finally at the end of that path. The more she realized it, the more the Black Lily's sword shattered further. The more she gave into the new feeling she found in her heart, overtaking her desire to cut the punchy boy's diamond fists, the crack in the sword surrounded it completely. And with the final lunge, Scheta had completed her journey on the path of blood. With that, the Black Lily sword exhausted its final durability and disappeared along with her enemy. You just gotta love how straightforward their dialogues are. Is absolutely brilliant, both of them. And again, great animations, incredible voice acting, what else can I ask for? Nothing to add. Klein and Asuna's scene is just so nice, with Alo players learning basic healing commands to do their best with sacred arts, surely having an easier time than the Nordic chants featured in Alo to tend to the wounded, and small banter between the two, Klein and Asuna, the reactions of the duo towards each other feel so genuine. It's a treat to watch, especially Klein's aloof behavior as expected of him. I'm still looking forward to the other side of him though. You had seen that side of his back in Ordinal Scale when shit gets serious, and he truly has to fight to protect his friends, no matter the pain he has to endure. And that moment is coming soon. With Poe's introduction done wonderfully, we got a whole lot more pain and depression to go through, starting with his backstory. Here's to hoping those flashbacks won't get the cutout. I was surprised they extensively covered Moonphase, a relatively small side character who will have a major role to play, sure. I wasn't surprised he was included properly, I was just surprised we start with his side of the story, just like novels, very accurately too. I simply wasn't expecting to have the depth on his side. Though, not surprisingly, Mr. Wol Sang, aka Moonphase here, is speaking Japanese. I guess it was too much to have an actual South Korean actor here. His realizations feel a bit too quick, but the gist of it remains the same. The guy is full aware that something feels wrong with the story being told, and along with Mei Mei Jiang, I'm sorry, I'm so out of my league with Korean names. If there's any Koreans out there or someone who speaks Korean, feel free to correct my pronunciation. Anyways, the gist of it is, they are not the only ones to feel weirded out by the whole narrative. It basically sounded like a viral mob campaign at this point. Surprisingly, that was exactly what Critter and Wasago had planned it to look like. Critter was still confused by Wasago's instructions on involving Chinese and Korean people. Sure, he wasn't uneducated like those who believed the countries shared physical borders, or those who thought South Korea and Japan was part of China, but he had no idea why Chinese and South Korean players would turn against the Japanese players. After all, they were relatively similar in culture compared to the United States on the other side of the world. He was curious why Chinese, Korean and Japanese VRMMO players would not be getting along well. There's a whole bunch of political backstory being completely skipped there. I won't cover it in this video either because it will be too much of a tangent. Just trust me, not at all surprised the anime completely cut it out. But if you're interested, do let me know in the comments and we'll have a longer chat about it. About the usage of the seed, the VRMMO politics, and how anyone outside of Japan basically feels like a second-class gamer in that Q&A video later this week. Next up, we got Subtilizer's entrance. Oh boy, that sky beam and the sky effects, absolutely gorgeous, though does it not make you feel like it's just warming up their effects engine for some future event? It should. Either way, Sinon is not really getting force choked here, at least in the novels she wasn't. I guess the anime implies that she's being force choked, which wouldn't be all that weird either, considering Gabe at this point has a pretty damn good understanding of how incarnation works, on top of the fact that Sinon is pretty much affected by negative incarnation here too. Basically, her fear and nightmares of the 4th BOB tournament making her feel much more tense, running out of breath, etc. So, whether the anime actually went with that implication or just wanted to emphasize Sinon's shock, both are viable. A minor scene of introductory formalities between the two was skipped from the contents of today's episode, though it's definitely gonna be there next week along with yet another big fight, so I will not get into that topic just yet. As for how Subtilizer looks and that big bat-like creature thingy, chances are it will be explained next week as well, or at the very least hinted at without being completely skipped, so if needed, I'll talk about it next week too. Seen with Higa, Rinko and Yanai, Higa was actually quite thrilled about his adventure being awfully lot like Mission Impossible, but I guess direct references is a no-go for the anime. I was going to complain that they weren't even being subtle with Yanai, but then I realized it was already time for his slimy Deban. Entirely intended choice of words there as a reference to his screen time back in season 1. But goddamn, even the animation on their low tier characters like Hans and Briggs is fucking crisp. Someone has been working hard. These are things you would expect the studio to simply cheap out on with basic movements, not not running across the room, changing perspective of the characters as they rotate towards something else, while maintaining a perfectly dynamic movement. I know pointing these out are minor things in the grand scheme of things, but I feel like they do give you a sense of how much individual care was provided to even the minor scenes like these. It really means the overall production pipeline is going solid for the score all around. And then we got the Korean deban. Obviously Po is speaking to them in Korean. He also addresses the Chinese players in Mandarin. He does know a couple of languages relevant to his life, let's say. Again, you'll hopefully experience it yourselves next week in the anime. And again, there are a bunch of players realizing holes in the narrative already, but the patriotism and mob mentality takes over most people quite fast, not giving things much thought. Asuna suddenly getting sick, probably the only instance in this episode where it felt lacking. Like, I can see everyone asking questions like, why did Asuna suddenly get sick? It looked like she was struck by something. Seems like something the anime could easily fix, but I can't fault them all that much when they have been doing an amazing job 3 weeks straight now. Let me explain something every once in a while, right? What happens here is that upon seeing the approaching Koreans, Asuna, mentally destroyed, wants to give her Stasia powers one last try. She first successfully manages to animate 2 of these big statues to attack the invaders for about 30 seconds, slowing them enough at first for some of the army to retreat to a safe position and continue fighting there. Collapsing to her knees in an attempt to create a wall between the oncoming enemies and the Japanese players, she tried conjuring up the remaining concentration she had in her head, but instead received a massive jolt through her head and coughing up blood along with the pain. It's always a good thing when all I have to do is minor clarifications like these. It just shows that you're getting quite an optimal experience in the anime. We made it all the way here from a time where I had to do things as far as making a special explained video for an entire chapter that was cut from the anime adaptation. Seeing Lisbeth and Shilika fighting quote-unquote heroically kind of makes me chuckle. It also makes me kind of worried for some later scenes, whether they will have the heart to animate the full brutality of the circumstances or not. But I shouldn't worry about that, things are going quite well, no need to think too much on future things. But this scene has even more Eiji deban, which really gets me happy. I mean, either they're setting him up to be one of the most disappointing cameos to ever exist, or we will have some proper scenes with Asuna and Klein in the next 2 episodes along with Eiji. I mean, either we'll get some truly epic scenes featuring Eiji, or we'll laugh our asses off asking, why the fuck did you tease him this much then? I sure am hoping it's the former though. Eiji is a great character after all, and I would love to see him have more prominence in the series. Still waiting for his Unitil Ring deban though. Unitil Ring, I think Reki goes with Unitil Ring, which doesn't work in English, but just stick to the script, Gamerturk. That's not in the script. It's absolutely great to see Eugene, Alicia and Sakuya kicking ass, GGO players providing long-range support, and nameless players get impaled to death. But nothing beats that Po laugh at the end. Those human army members in the back sure have seen awful things since the war started just a day ago, but they have yet to see the leader of Laughing Coffin in his full glory. As for the cliffhanger with Yanai, yeah, should have been very clear, especially if you have either watched my opening explained or just were careful enough when watching the opening. I love how they portray how nervous he is due to what he's about to do in prior scenes too, off in the background. But with so much praise from me throughout the episode, I feel like the opinion section here at the end became a bit redundant for the past 2-3 weeks. This was mostly my quote-unquote criticism corner at the end of the videos to keep the complaints separate from the light novel versus anime comparisons, but with how accurate the adaptation has been in part 2, they kinda turned into praises as to how accurate things were in the main portions of the video. Anyways, 10 out of 10 episode, minor cuts that I'm glad were cut, has certainly been beneficial for the flow and pacing, beautiful animation even in rudimentary scenes, Great to see old returning soundtracks like how the Death Gun team plays on Poe's appearance, which is also relevant again. Wait for next week for more on that. I am thrilled about how far the adaptation has come. From the lackluster Human Realm arc, the relatively disastrous Cathedral Assault adaptation, to a solid one with War of Underworld, and a borderline perfect 10 out of 10 with Part 2. But goddammit, this video got too long again. Next episode is titled Code 871, so more focus on Yanai, but also most certainly the start of the conflict between Sinon and Subtilizer. We may also get to see more Lifa and Poe action, but I also would not be surprised if one of the two gets pushed to the episode after. My choice is pretty clear, but I won't say that here. I personally expect next week to wrap up Volume 17, Alicization Awakening, utilizing that perfect bait cliffhanger, as we only have 50 pages left in the book, with the second most misleading title, but we'll have to wait and see. Weekly Alicization Q&A is back, so if you have questions that you feel like were not answered in the explained episode, do ask them below in the comment section with hashtag AskGamerturk. If your question is regarding the future, please add a spoiler warning and give it a couple of blank lines to push spoilers away. And no, I will not answer spoiler questions for the sake of spoilers, like when will Kirito wake up? If you're that curious for spoilers, just read the books. Amazon and Book Depository links are in the description. But if you made it this far, hit that like button and subscribe, and hit the bell icon as well while you're at it, and comment Devourer of Souls down below to let me know. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter for the fastest news possible. Lens Squad merch is still around, but now we got Medina, Kirito and Yu-Gi-Oh merch too, so do check it out. A huge thanks to all my patrons and channel members as always, and until next time, stay cool.